I'm about to do something I said I wouldn't do. Well, technically I said I shouldn't do it, so no promises were broken, but here we are. I've decided to learn how to knit socks for the very first time using this 103-year-old knitting book. Today we have almost unlimited resources in terms of tutorials and YouTube videos showing us exactly what to do right at our fingertips. That's how I learned to knit in the first place. But that made me wonder, how would someone living over 100 years ago go about learning a brand new knitting skill with only the books available to them at the time? So I've decided to set myself a challenge. Like someone living in 1922, I won't be using the internet, modern videos, or any current day resources to help me. Any information or help has to come from the antique resources I already own, which include my knitting manuals from 1904, 1912, and 1918. Now, is this the smartest way to end up with something that actually looks like a sock and fits my foot? Probably not. But I'm doing it anyway out of a mix of stubbornness and that special kind of blind confidence that only comes from not knowing what you're getting yourself into. So let's see if I can learn a completely new knitting skill armed with nothing but this century-old pattern. So this is the book I'm going to be using for the sock patterns. It is the Bear Brand Busilla Blue Book, Volume 41, and I believe it is from 1922. Yep, copyright 1922. So I've decided I'm going to try this sock here, which is number 8639 with the stripes and the clocks. So let's flip to that page and see what we're looking for. So we have striped sock number 8639, and it gives us a gauge of 11 rows to 1 inch. And with this yarn tells me the gauge is about 40 rows to 4 inches, so that's 10 rows to the inch. So it seems, I'll of course have to do a gauge swatch, but it seems I want to be on the smaller side of the needle range here, so 2.5, maybe even 2.25. So I decided to take another look at the pattern, and I noticed it is just called striped sock, and there is no indication of whether it's meant to be for a woman or for a man, or what size it's supposed to be. I don't know what I expected from an antique pattern, but still some of these patterns in here do indicate, they do specify whether it's for a woman or a man, like woman's golf stockings here, whereas this is just striped sock. That's it. That's all they tell you. So why don't they give me any indication of size? That's a mystery for the ages. See, and this one says man's golf stockings, so of course I would pick the one pattern that has no sizing info. If the sock were meant for a woman, I bet it would be way too small for me. They were designing for this classic 1920s 5'2" eyes of blue sort of girl, and that is most definitely not me. I wear a size 10 shoe, European 42, so maybe a men's sock would be closer, but unfortunately the pattern gives no clue either way. So I gave in and did some math, and I will spare you the sleep-inducing details, but long story short, if I go down a needle size to try and hit the pattern gauge of 11 rows per inch, then I think I will probably end up with a sock that is too tight around my calf, And while I can adjust the length of the sock more easily, I guess, I can't really adjust the width easily or maybe at all. I do enjoy having blood circulation in my feet, so I think I'm gonna stick with the gauge that I got originally with my gauge swatch here. This is 10 rows to the inch as opposed to 11. And I think I'm just going to hope that that's a good size for me. Yeah, now I'm just going to go cast on before I can think better about what I'm getting myself into here. Okay, I'm gonna go cast on. All right, we have stitches divided up onto 4 needles. I promise it's gonna get better. What am I doing? I'm just staring at these needles, hoping they're gonna give me some kind of answer, hoping they will speak to me. But alas, they do not. Okay, I've cast on in the round, which only took me half an hour to remember how to do that without resorting to the internet, which I am not allowed to do with this challenge, but it looks correct to me, and that's about as much as I can hope for here. So next, the pattern wants me to do a knit 1, purl 1 rib for 4.5 inches. And I've done ribbing before. I've done it in the round, never at such a small gauge as this, but I'm feeling pretty okay about this part. And I've got my coffee at the ready for moral support, and I'll catch up to you in a bit once I've done the cuff. I've done the ribbing up to a little bit more than 2 inches. That's what it looks like. It seems like a lot of ribbing to me, 4.5 inches. That's more than double what I have here. And just thinking about how that would look, I don't know if that's the kind of look that I would like, honestly, even if that's what the pattern is going for. And, you know, I think that if I was a girl in 1922 following this pattern book, I would be able to make my own creative tweaks to the pattern, so to speak. I'm not fundamentally changing the pattern, so I still am following the construction and stuff like that, but this is really an aesthetic thing for me. I don't think having this much ribbing is going to affect the fit compared to 4.5 inches. So yeah, I think I'm allowed to do this. I'm going to allow myself to do this just as a cosmetic change. So with that, I'm now going to move on to the leg section, which is in plain stockinette stitch for a while, but has the colorwork stripes and the clocks. So now we're moving on to the leg portion of the sock, and the instructions say to knit 1 round plain, which I've just done, and divide the stitches onto 3 needles since that is more convenient when working the pattern. I've done that as well. Then it says mark first stitch of first needle as quote back stitch. So I'm going to take that to mean I put a stitch marker at my first stitch of the beginning of my round. Then it says cut 3 strands of contrasting color 10 inches long, which I have done here. I actually measured more like 14 or 15 inches because I don't trust the pattern, and well, I don't trust myself, honestly, so might as well be a little generous with it. So you have this pattern broken up by a main color round, and then a pattern, and then a main color round, and then a pattern. Okay, I'm reading too much into it. I think I just have to not think so hard about it, take it line by line, and hope for the best. So I took counting from the back stitch to mean you don't include the back stitch in your count because you're counting from the back stitch. 32, 33, 34, 35. So there's 35 stitches of the main color, followed by another of the contrast color, 17. Hold up. Hold on. How am I supposed to get that stitch? What? I think I should have counted the back stitch as the number 1, like as my first stitch. Oh dear. Okay, I'm gonna think back. I'll see you once I've done that. I'm having so much fun. I have returned. I have tinked all the way back to that first colorwork stitch, and this time around I'm going to count the back stitch as my first stitch, not counting from the back stitch. I am counting the back stitch as my first stitch. So last night I completed the first stripe with the clocks on either side. I got the full diamond on either side of the sock. So now that I sort of have an idea of how the color work generally works with this project, I'm gonna start on the next stripe in the contrasting color and just continue down the leg until I get to the heel, which is probably where I'm gonna start running into some problems again, but I won't think about that part for now. So I think I spoke a little too soon there because I've already run into multiple problems with this very next stripe. I mean, nothing catastrophic, but I did have to tink back several times, partially from me just not counting correctly, but also because the directions sometimes threw me off. Like when they said for the 19th round that it was the same as the 11th round, actually, it's just not the same as the 11th round. It just isn't. It's similar to the 11th round, but it's not the same. I think they assumed I had the innate cosmic knowledge that would allow me to immediately realize what I was actually supposed to do for that round, but I did not. I did get it eventually, and I did finish the stripe eventually, which looks decent. Apart from that one little stitch, which is going to bother me, but as long as you don't look too close at it, yeah, that's okay. Just look at it from that far away. One unexpected issue, I guess, that I ran into was with switching colors between stripes, because I actually have not knitted something with plain stripes before, and what the pattern said was to just drop the main color. That's all they said, drop the main color. not to cut it off or anything, but then I realized that would have me bringing the main color up across this contrast color stripe to start this main color stripe again, and it just seemed wrong to me for some reason. So I did end up cutting it off and just joining it in again here, but that left me with a gap, and I couldn't figure out how to deal with it other than tying a knot, which I really am loath to do because I don't like tying knots in general in my knitting, and especially not for a sock. Yeah, so I can't use the internet to figure that out, so I hope that the cosmic knowledge will come to me eventually. Let's hope for that. In order to decide what length I want to do for this sock, like how many more stripes I want to do, I got another one of my socks. So if I stopped with this next stripe, it would probably go down to there, and then it would be maybe just about the same length, I guess. That's sort of where the heel starts. And of course, before I was worrying about how small this might end up, and now looking at these two socks, I'm actually worrying, is it gonna end up too big? So I'm just not gonna let myself worry about that. Let's stop, let's not even compare actually. Bad idea. So my plan, which is always subject to change right now, is to finish up this contrast stripe here and then go on to the heel portion. So that would be 2 stripes fewer than the pattern, but since my row gauge is larger, actually I think the sock will end up approximately the same length, maybe like a quarter or ½ inch shorter, but I think it might end up being pretty similar still. Also, look at these lovely flowers from the garden. I just want to appreciate them. Okay, back to struggling with socks. I finished up my last stripe, and we are at the highly anticipated, highly dreaded for me, heel portion. And let's see what it has to say. Slip the 16 stitches before backstitch and the 16 after backstitch onto 1 needle for heel, 33 stitches, leaving remaining 39 stitches on the 2 instep needles. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. See if I can do this without dropping all my stitches. All right, so all of those are on 1 needle now. Work entire heel in main color, purl 1 row, knit 1 row alternately for 28 rows, always slipping the first stitch after turning. Okay, I am confused again. So it says purl 1 row, knit 1 row alternately, not knit 1 row, purl 1 row, which would be stockinette, right? Because the knit row would be facing outwards. If you purl 1 row first, then that would be the purl side facing outward. And is that what they want? Because it seems like you would want it to remain in stockinette stitch. I'm gonna see if I can glean any information from any other books I have about this. This is my 1918 Fleischer's Knitting and Crochet Manual. I know they have a section in the beginning on knitting for the war, and here is a basic sock. They also split up the stitches, so the heel stitches on 1 needle and the rest split up into 2 for the instep. And for the heel stitches, they knit and purl a row alternately for 30 rows, slipping the first stitch. Okay, so that sounds the same. You just look at them side by side. All right, based on what this says, which is essentially the same thing as my pattern here, the only difference being that they say knit 1 row, purl 1 row here, and in 1922 they say purl 1 row, knit 1 row alternately. I'm just gonna assume that we're keeping the stockinette as stockinette, therefore knitting on the knit side and purling on the purl side. I think I'm going to try and put a lifeline through these stitches right now because I need a lifeline for my peace of mind. Like, what is that? What is happening? What did I do? Luckily it's on the back of my foot, so... Alright, first row of the heel portion is done. And I've got 27 more to go before the next step. Alright, I have a square stockinette flap thingamajig knitted, and I believe I'm ready to move on. Now begin to turn heel on wrong side. What does turn heel even mean? I legitimately have no idea, but I'm just going to follow it line by line, word by word, letter by letter. I have my lifeline here providing a lot of emotional and mental support right now. It's doing quite a lot for me, so let's do this. 16, 17, 18, purl 2 together, turn. So it's kind of like a short row, I guess. I'm trusting the directions here. Purl 2 together, turn. Hit the camera as well. Slip 1, knit 5, slip 1, knit 1, pass, slip stitch over the knitted. Slip, oh dear. Emergency, hold on. No, come back, please. Come back. Emergency surgery must be done to save my dropped stitch. And I also have to remember how to fix the dropped stitch. I have to like pull it through. I hate this. Go through here, take that loop, pull it through. Okay, crisis averted. I'm going to decipher the mystery that is this sort of continue on in the same way and have fun sort of section that they're telling me. So I'll be doing that and I'll come back once I've done it or once I've failed entirely. So I kept on working on it last night, and as you can see, we have what appears to be an actual heel. And I am so incredibly pleased with this. I am so happy with it. I don't know why it's bringing me so much joy, but if I knew that a heel of a sock, knitting a heel of a sock could make me this happy, I think I would have done this years and years and years ago, because wow, I just can't stop looking at it. I'm marveling at how this took shape just from some decreases and some short rows, and the fact that I did it with incredibly cryptic instructions is just making me very, very happy. I am so happy. Even with my little mess ups here and there, I'm so happy right now. I also spent some time weaving in ends, and I got all of these woven in last night, but somehow I still have this many. But anyway, now that I have done my heel that brings me so much joy, I am on to the gusset section. It says, pick up and knit 14 stitches on left edge of heel. First sentence in, and I'm confused. So, what is the left edge of the heel? Is it the left edge when the sock is in the orientation it would be on my foot? Or is it the left edge of when I just finished knitting it? In which case it would be the opposite edge. I thought I was on a roll with my excitement over doing the heel so well, but now I am stuck. It's very hard to explain exactly what my problem is here, but just rest assured I am very confused. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to try something and see if it works. I have gone around, connected the heel across the instep, back around to the heel, and now I guess I am just sort of knitting around and around, maybe doing some decreases and such. We shall see what they say. So I said that the whole challenge of this video was to learn how to knit a sock just like someone in 1922 would, being that I would have no access to the internet and no modern help of any kind. But that being said, someone in 1922 actually learning how to knit a sock like me really would probably not be alone in a room like I am right now with a book for help, with only a book or two for help. 103 years ago, which was when this pattern I'm using was published, knitting was obviously much, much more common, so most people probably would have learned how to knit from someone close to them, like a mother or a neighbor or a teacher or what have you. So really, if someone was trying to learn how to knit socks, they could go to someone nearby, probably in the very same house as them, and they could ask for help. So the pattern book that I'm using is really more of a general guide, I guess, a reference, not a step-by-step, in-depth tutorial like the patterns that we're used to today. They assumed that you already knew the basics of knitting, and in some cases more than the basics of knitting, that you were fairly proficient at it. So that's why they can seem very cryptic to us. So I was thinking a little bit about the context of when this book was written, 1922, which is not long at all after the First World War, and the First World War was a time that saw a huge increase in knitting because of the demand for practical knitted items for the soldiers that were fighting in the trenches. Things like scarves and gloves, sweaters, and especially socks. Knitting in a lot of places became a patriotic act and a shared effort between a lot of different groups, so it would make sense that a lot of people who didn't knit before were learning to knit at this time from other people. I did go down kind of a little Google rabbit hole when I was looking into this, and I did find some very interesting photos that I'll be putting up on the screen if I can. They just illustrate the massive shared effort that there was put into knitting for the soldiers in the war, and just how many people were involved, how many different types of people across generations, across the genders. So I hope the little history tangent isn't too boring or too much of a diversion, but I really found it quite interesting, and being into historical and vintage knitting, it's nice to know the context around what you're doing. It's not just a piece of fashion. You want to kind of understand what people were thinking at the time, why they did the things that they did. You could just look at the pattern and think it's a badly written pattern because it's so cryptic. But really, if you know the context that most people knew how to knit and most people had people around them, very close to them, that also knew how to knit, then it becomes more clear why these patterns would be less descriptive. So I've been knitting around this foot area, and I had to switch between the contrast color back to the main color again, and then I've been knitting along merrily in my main color, and then I just saw, do you see that? How did I do that? This is why I tell myself not to knit when I'm terribly brain foggy, and yet I still do it. As you can see here, we have a very nearly complete sock with just some stitches to weave together. And I did get a little carried away there. I think last you saw it, I was about here. And then I finished up the foot section, got to the toe section, immediately, miraculously understood the instructions, so I just went for it and did the decreasing until I ended up with 7 stitches on the front of the foot and the bottom of the foot, which I think I'm now supposed to weave together in some way. So I'll take a look at the instructions for that. I'm kind of looking at the toe and realizing how pointy it looks. I don't know if that's like how it's supposed to look, but compared to most socks I see, this does kind of have a very distinct pointiness to it. I'm kind of reminded of those medieval, what are they called? Those medieval pointy shoes. What are they called? Poulain. I think they're called Poulain shoes from the 14th or 15th century. I'm a little concerned I'm going to be walking around like a medieval nobility in my pointy socks, but hopefully once I put the sock on my foot, it will sort of mold more and not look like a medieval Poulain shoe. So, break off yarn leaving a 12-inch end. That should be more than 12 inches. So pass through first stitch of front needle as if knitting. So first stitch front needle as if knitting. So we want as if to knit. Pass through and slip the stitch off. Okay, I'm trusting you. Pass through second stitch as if purling, but leave stitch on the needle. I'm assuming this is also the front needle. They don't specify. So as if to purl, pass it through, and leave it on the needle. Draw yarn through first stitch of back needle as if purling and slip it off. So like that. And slip that stitch off without losing all my other stitches, ideally. Okay. Draw yarn through second stitch of back needle as if knitting and leave it. As if knitting, pull through, and leave it on. Repeat from the asterisk until all the stitches are joined and fasten off. Okay. Last 2 stitches. Go through the first one as if to knit, and go through the back stitch as if to purl. And drop that off the needle. I've got a little awkward thing happening here, but actually that join looks pretty nice to me. Looks pretty clean. Other than that, but when I weave in my end, I can probably hide it. So there it is, my pointy-toed 1920s sock. Hopefully won't look 1420s. I just have a bunch of ends to weave in, and now I just have to do it all over again to make the other sock. And through the magic of video editing, I will see you when the second sock is done to show you the final result. And finally, we've made it to the end of the video. If you held out this long, thank you so much. I'd love to know what you thought of this whole ordeal that I put myself through. Do you think a Victorian grandmother would approve of my very first knitted socks? This certainly was an adventure for me and a long process. If you notice the spring flowers somewhere in the video, that's because I actually started filming in May and finished the socks in July. And as of posting this video, it is October. But at least I can say it's right on theme for Socktober. Surprisingly for me, I think the construction of the sock itself might have been the easiest part overall, mostly because of the fact that I chose some pretty involved color work. I had issues with my tension on the clocks and often got massive holes whenever I changed colors for a different stripe. So now that I have returned to the 21st century, I look forward to learning how to fix those issues in the future. But while I do love the internet for its endless information, I have to say that the feeling of accomplishment every time I worked my way through a difficult or confusing section of this pattern all on my own was really something. I mean, you did see how excited I was over just the heel shaping. If you enjoyed the video and you'd like to join me for more vintage-inspired projects and crafting things of various sorts, make sure to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thank you so much for watching again, and bye!